And there is a Soros connection. I mean, I didn't know there was a Soros connection until the second time I just watched that video with you guys. I didn't catch it the first time. But Perkins Coie, they got some money from Jorge Soros. And when you start to track his money into these various democratic endeavors and lawsuits and whatnot, it's pretty serious. All right, so we're going to get to our first media block, and then we have a news analysis engine that we're going to start using juxtaposed to some of these blocks. We're going to spice it up and add a little octane to the engine. Like, there used to be back in the day such a thing as high power muscle cars, and they wouldn't run on the low octane that regular cars after the gas crisis of the 70s. So you'd have to go either find the 100 octane pumps, or you'd have to put in the mojo that makes it go faster. So nitrous would be the modern equivalent. Anyway, we're doing that because we need to learn quicker, faster, better, more accurately, and be able to talk to more people about the ideas of freedom and peace before tyranny and terrorism and violence take root, because you're starting to see some of those ashes turn into like little fires breaking out all over the place. It's like precipitating down from some fire someplace else, and it catches everything else on fire. There's been a lot of that this week, from the brutal murder of Jamie White over InfoWars to a whole bunch of other nonsense that's going on this week, and a whole bunch of other those acts of terrorism that are being committed, burning people's private property and costing insurance companies a whole lot of money. Those sort of things happened like 10x this past week. So we have to keep an eye on that. But first, we're going to go this media block. And I would like to welcome back friend of the show, What's Her Face. She took a little year off. She came back. She's got a little Fauci piece for us. It's titled, "Everyone Still Has AIDS." I'm not sure what she means. We're going to have to check it out together. Then we're going to the liberal Hivemind, because Ray Epps, he be suing people now. And there's something to be learned from that whole process, because when we get later in the show into Operation Gladio and Soros and NATO is Soros, you're going to start to see from the deep state down to USAID to your schools and your town halls how all that stuff has been thoughtfully tied together by the Open Society Foundations and the other creations out of the Rothschild-funded Soros. 1968. And if you want the reference to that, we'll bring it up later in the show, because even Mike Benz doesn't talk about that aspect. I think it is an important, worthwhile piece of content, information, knowledge nugget to know who Soros was started and protected and funded by, and who he works for, probably still to this day. All right. Without further ado, let's go to What's Her Face? Yeah.
Because it's time to mark another square off your 2025 bingo card. A bombshell research paper published in medRxiv has gone viral these past few weeks after linking an alarming new syndrome called PVS, or post-vaccination syndrome, to the COVID-19 vaccine. The researchers conducted a decentralized cross-sectional study involving 42 PVS participants and 22 healthy vaccinated controls. Compared with controls, PVS participants exhibited differences in immune profiles, including reduced circulating memory and effector CD4 T cells. CD4 T cells are crucial immune cells that help your body fight off infection, and a low count indicates a weakened immune system. It's most commonly associated with HIV. Yeah, you heard me right. The COVID-19 vaccine has just been confirmed to cause AIDS. Who had Everyone Has AIDS in 2025? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah, Johnny! I knew you had it, buddy. That's one way to get rid of the gay stigma.
All right, folks, so this just popped up on my timeline. We've got this post from Leading Reports. Breaking: Perkins Coie, the law firm that funded research for the Trump-Russia dossier, which was financed by Hillary Clinton, is now representing infamous J6er Ray Epps in his lawsuit against Tucker Carlson. Think about it. Every single Trump supporter who stepped foot inside the Capitol that day, whether they were taking selfies or just following the crowd, got the book thrown at them. We just covered a story of one J6er who was being threatened with 20 years plus in prison and was being strong-armed to flip on other people who were present that day with the threat of never seeing his family ever again. These people were called terrorists, thrown in solitary confinement, giving years-long prison sentences for trespassing, held in captivity without even a trial date. The media still refers to J6 as the darkest day in American history, worse than Pearl Harbor according to Kamala Harris, worse than the frickin' Civil War, I guess. Yet Ray Epps, the guy who was actually caught yelling we need to go into the Capitol the night before, the guy whispering into people's ears right before they breached the barricades, well, this guy very conveniently was never charged with any crime or even conspiracy of a crime. No, he got a sweetheart plea deal, and now a high-powered DNC-connected law firm is representing him in a lawsuit against Tucker Carlson? Come on. Ray Epps wasn't just some lost MAGA guy who got caught up in the moment. He was the moment. He was front and center, calling the shots, instigating the charge, whispering into people's ears like a handler guiding assets. And I'm not just saying that. We've covered it, the literal video proof of everything that I said, and even people pointing at him and chanting Fed, 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 because even they in real time knew that something was off about this guy. He stuck out like a sore thumb, yet despite all of this, while grandmas and meme lords were getting locked up for standing outside the velvet ropes, this guy got off with nothing. If that doesn't set off every alarm bell in your head, then you are not paying attention.
All right, so what's her face? I think brought just a little comedy, a little dark humor to a very heavy topic about people being injured by the vaccinations, and then we'll get into Perkins Coie and Ray Epps. But let's check in. What do you think, Scott and Paul? As we move through these stories, right, and we notice things, I mean, our natural tendencies, I think, are to like look stuff up, and as we do that, we demonstrate that leadership perspective for the audience that if you don't know about Perkins Coie, you type in on your super smartphone in the browser, Perkins Coie, C-O-I-E. Yeah, I think that's how you spell it. And then wiki. And then within a couple minutes, you can glean some very useful information, and you can start to see the big picture that is not going to be pervaded through the people that are carrying the Ray Epps is suing Tucker Carlson story. And that's how you learn to read between the lies, as it were. It's a very powerful skill set.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I was over here. I was like, okay, are these the same? Is this the same law firm behind all the Alex Jones nonsense? And so I was over there, like, and so I'm like, no, they're not the same one. It's another whole group of, law firms that probably are being funded and controlled by the same entities that are behind Perkins Coie and all that stuff. But crazy stuff.
It is interesting because the Soros dollar doesn't fall far from the deep state tree, right? And there is a Soros connection. I mean, I didn't know there was a Soros connection until the second time I just watched that video with you guys. I didn't catch it the first time. But Perkins Coie, they got some money from Jorge Soros. And when you start to track his money into these various democratic endeavors and lawsuits and whatnot, it's pretty serious. So let's go over to the Wikipedia page for Perkins Coie, and they're going to make it bland and dry, right? They don't want you to read between the lies. So they're just going to say it's an American law firm based in Seattle, Washington. What else is in Seattle, Washington? Is there a big company, big globalist company? Oh, yeah, Microsoft. That's one of their customers. That's interesting. They have companies like Google, Intel, Meta, and Amazon. The firm is known for its pro bono work. I wonder if they're helping Ray Epps out of the goodness of their heart. Perkins Coie has represented Democratic and liberal groups. In 2025, the law firm, as well as Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison, was targeted by the Donald Trump administration as part of a larger effort to punish law firms that worked for his political opponents. Well, I mean, if all you do is work for the political opponents on one side, I guess you got to expect some flack. The firm has represented the Boeing company. Did they have some problem with whistleblowers lately? That's interesting. Again, it's dry, but if you read, it's like, why do they have offices in Shanghai, China, and Beijing, and these other Shenzhen, and these other formerly East India Company kind of British-held territories? In fact, in May 2024, the firm announced the launch of a London office with a technology-focused corporate practice. The London office is led by corporate lawyer Ian Bagshaw. Clientele, Perkins Coie is well known for advising many of the world's largest technology companies. We might be learning about that with Conscious Resistance, Derek Rose later. So that's a little foreshadowing, including Amazon, Google, Microsoft, as well as large corporations like Boeing, Costco, and Starbucks. The firm has advised Microsoft on its growing partnership with OpenAI Okay. And then when you get down to presidential campaign and election, these efforts were funded by the Democratic Party, as well as $5 million provided by the billionaire George Soros. The practice received criticism from some civil rights groups because the firm brought lawsuits primarily in jurisdictions that would help the Democratic Party. How dare they act one-sided and then complain when somebody notices it? Strong connection to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee. And if we just went back in time, let's go back in time for a second. Let's go over to the history blueprint real quick. Democratic, well, I probably have it here, right here. There you go. The United States pro-slavery political party from the 1800s that was run by a guy named August Belmont, who was the Rothschild International Banking Family official agent for their business in America, which also just happened to be being in charge of the pro-slavery political party, which today claims to be the party of the people of color. So I don't know. I guess you have to be pretty blind to history to buy into that. But given the state of our education system, it's not surprising that people have fallen into that trap. And it's like one of those, Venus flytrap type things. It's like gets grip on them, that unbelief of things that are real.
That's interesting, man. And so this may not be a terribly popular opinion, but it's really interesting to see the government as a whole. It exists and it has systems that are in place. And if you know how to use the system, then you can thrive. And it's almost like they want you to engage with the system. They want you to take the reins. It's like the IRS, right? If you know how to, there's the code, the tax code, everything like that. If you know how to use those codes and use it to your advantage, you don't have to pay taxes if you're like a business owner, right? You can work the system and engage with it in such a way that it actually works for you if you want. So the Democrats are so good. They figured out such a way to utilize these systems. Like, yeah, that all seems like unethical kind of, but really
you can't hate them because they're playing by the rules of the game.
They're playing the rule. Yeah, they're good at that shit, dude. They're really, really good at that. The people like conservatives, freedom-minded people are not good at that sort of thing. You know what I mean? And so it's like they recognize that the judicial system is a powerful weapon to push forward their agendas. And so they maximize that to the best of their ability. And so then therefore that means that it actually removes people's freedoms in the long run, but they're just good at playing the game with the system the way it is. And it's like,
and they have created the game that is the system.
Exactly.
In order to win, you must play that game to some extent, but you also want to be just like the hero at the end of the hero's journey, be able to stand with one foot and, one foot in each partition. Yep. You know how to do freedom, agorism, trade, private membership associations, but you also know how to do these things so you can interact with family and friends and live life to its fullest, right?
Totally.
I did want to close real quick the loop because I just demonstrated there's a direct connection between the Rothschild banking family, the Democratic National Party, right? That's a historical element. And then if we were to follow that forward in time with Soros funding Perkins Coie, who works for the Democratic National Party, right? If Soros also got his money from Rothschild, then that's like 100+ year arc. Actually, it's almost exactly 100 years because it was the quantum fund getting started in 1968 by Edmund de Rothschild funding George Soros. And this article, they really do not want you to search, find, read, remember, talk about with other people. But I have thoughtfully documented it, and we still have access to it over here because of the Wayback Machine and archive.org. They bring us this Washington Times article that the Washington Times does not have the resources to show you any longer. But thankfully, through the magic of write once, read many drives, we have access. And the title from the Washington Times article on Thursday, April 28th, 2011. So this is not ancient history that you can't find on the internet. This is recent history they have purposefully censored because of what is disclosed in this article. De Borschgrave is the author of this article, right? So the title is kind of weird, but the gist is about to be elucidated. Geneva gnomes, global dread. I'm saying it clearly for the clip, Jeannie. Grotesque financial mismanagement could trigger unpredictable turmoil. The gnomes of Zurich were derogatory caricatures of secretive, greedy, stiff Swiss German bankers, Pince-Nez Equiver, who ruled over the land of secret numbered accounts for tax dodgers all over the world. With the world's best financial intelligence service, they knew their stuff and seldom spoke, even in retirement. Their Geneva counterparts in French-speaking Switzerland were even more sophisticated and relaxed in the company of global wheeler dealers and weren't afraid to speak their minds, albeit off record. Such was George C. Carl Weiss, the brain behind Bank Privé, owned by the late Baron Edmund de Rothschild. His biggest claim to fame, George Soros and the launch of his quantum fund in 1969. Admonish me, I said 1968 a few minutes ago. That's why we go to the artifacts, so that I don't pass on errors to the future. As an original $100,000 stake in Mr. Soros's fund was worth $150 million by 1994. Between 1970 and 2000, the return was 3,365%. That's a heck of a return on investment. So ties in with Bank of England and Soros, and you can continue to read on, and the story continues and all that good stuff. But most people would say that's an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory instead of saying that was in the news 15 years ago in the Washington Times. There's also interesting Washington Times pieces from like 1989. Young boys, prostitutes, took midnight tour of the White House and drew the vice president's bedroom or the president's bedroom, I forget. But they had the credit card receipts on the front page of the Washington Times. That's probably also a little hard for you to find these days. But these artifacts exist, and once you know they exist and you know how to find them, now you have credible evidence and information and artifacts that you can convey that knowledge in a useful way to other people instead of them just saying you're a conspiracy theorist or you hate certain group of people or any of these types of things. Like Soros doesn't get along with Israel, so you can't get into these anti-Semitic arguments. He's more anti-Semitic than most of the people out there in the white supremacy movement. He helped to hunt down Jews during World War II, as he admitted on 60 Minutes, and help hunt down their wealth and the people themselves for the Nazis. And he said it was the best time of his life. So if you can't critique somebody like that, you might be an NPC or someone who's brainwashed, or I don't know. We're gonna get to it because we have some clips later that explain such things. I'm just laying the groundwork, but it's substantial. It is relevant. It is evidentiary, and you can see it for yourself. Print it out. You can go look it up on the microfiche or whatever they got to get the archives at the Washington Times. It's a real thing. More people should understand that over a 100-year dynamic from the Civil War Democratic pro-slavery party being run by the Rothschild international banking family and George Soros, who is quite dominant on the Democratic deep state stage up to present. Like he's about to kick off and hand it all to his son, Alexander, who married Huma Abedin, right? He's with Hillary Clinton's ex-girlfriend or whatever that situation was. So there's a whole continuity of deep state skullduggery, swampiness, if you will, that needs to be dealt with. And I'm not sure that Trump's or his cabinet's prepared to deal with any of that. So I think it's we the people who need to understand such things and make such things known to other people. That's the gist. But
do you think it's politically incorrect to call that Alexander Soros is getting Anthony Weiner's sloppy seconds? Is that a gross thing to say? I feel like it's an offensive thing to say or think, but I just wanted to put it out there.
Eskimo brothers, dude.
Eskimo brothers.
What'd you say? He's getting Hillary Clinton's sloppy seconds? I missed what you said.
Alexander Soros is getting Anthony Weiner's sloppy seconds.
No, that's what I said. Didn't I say that?
Yeah. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I think Anthony Weiner and Hillary Clinton had the same shared account. That's what I was thinking. For a friend, not even in you guys. I don't want to put you guys in danger because there has been legitimate brutal murders in the past week. So I'm not going to make fun of Clinton death count or any of that type of stuff, or their crime family syndicate. They're not whacking at people. It's the people who own the Clintons that protect their assets. That's how that works. And they work through law firms who hire hitmen to do those dirty deeds, done very expensively and with lots of NDAs.
So do you think the creation of corporations has kind of been like the best thing that's ever happened to gangsterism?
Well, if you were a gangster and you could give artificial personhood to a thing and then go international with it and kind of take over the world, yeah, you could make a point for that. Corporations, LLCs, for the average entrepreneur trying to like make their way through life, like that's not a factor. they're held to account in many cases. But when you get these kind of faceless corporations that are immortal, right? That used to be you had a corporate charter and there was a beginning, middle, and end to your charter. And when you did the thing, built the bridge, you're done, you're dissolved, right? So corporations had a meaning and purpose. And when they outlived that, they're out of there. And then these guys are like, but what if we didn't? What if we just kept the money chain rolling? What if we made a bunch of military companies and we made some places that mine the stuff for the military companies and we made a big syndicate and didn't tell anybody about it and we'll use their money to fund it? Like that would probably go on. 20th century people were like all amazed with radio and TV. Woo! They got rid of front porches and started like everyone sits in their house and watches the single point of like that was Fahrenheit 451. That was the whole telescreen. That Montaug's wife was all hooked. Like she was addicted. I remember reading the book, but also the film version from back in the day. And they're all just like, and it's like with people with their smartphones now, right? It's also in 2001. It's the monolith. It's the 16:9 aspect ratio. Put anything in the black screen. Yeah. So there's yeah.
What do you think is more pernicious then, corporatism or the further creation of NGOs and tax exempt foundations to do the will of billionaire philanthropists?
Well, I mean, you got a hat tip to those smart fuckers because they're like, they've done really well for themselves. They got away with it for like a century. They dismantled a bunch of American culture. They took away our education system. They replaced it with an indoctrination system and nobody said boo, right? Because they were all getting more than they had in the last generation. Until recently, when people started trying to cash in their, college degrees and finding out like it's, when I went to school, it used to like in the stalls, people would scribble, it would say liberal education or liberal graduation certificates, right? Diplomas. And it was the toilet paper because they weren't worth more than the toilet, something to wipe your ass with, right?
Yeah.
So when our education became non-functional, I think we became dysfunctional. And that benefited the people who wanted to rule us through tax-exempt foundations, Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, Carnegie Foundation, to name a few. It sounds cliche, but it's actually called the Reese Committee. And, the public Congress hearings on the un-American activities of those NGOs 80 years ago, they never got stopped or punished. They did nothing but gain momentum and fund things like the CIA, MK Ultra, Operation Gladio. All that stuff is top down from those entities, So there is a hierarchy. The Ford Foundation gives the CIA its marching orders. It's a function, like the CIA is there to serve those types of foundations. It's not there to protect America. Like the whole thing is cockeyed from how they tell you what the history and evolution of the institution is and what it actually does. What is the actual form and function creation of those things? And you see, it's just bankers protecting their assets for the most part, using Wall Street lawyers in America. Right, so MI6 is made by City of London bankers, and CIA was composed of Wall Street lawyers, starting with OSS, coming out of World War I, where they got a very close, cozy bond with the British, and then you couple on Kufi and AIPAC and all the Christian Zionism, and the like monocle lens, like myopic. What is it? Myopic, like the one. You're not seeing the stereo vision of the thing. You're just seeing this one thing. I'm like, open the other eye. Like we have a blind spot, and the blind spot is it's getting more egregious and therefore more obvious, and people will notice it all soon. I think
it's almost like we need another Reese committee and another church committee to expose all those levels of the deep state, both on the CIA at like all the intelligence level, but also everything to do with the tax exempt foundations, the NGOs, everything Doge has uncovered, because I think they've been working in tandem and running the media system, basically the mainstream media system, as the way to cover for all these things, because you have to spin these narratives as cover stories for where all this money is going. Grand Theft World, right? It's all about a robbery. And at the end of the day, these are all gangsters, and there's no honor among thieves. And that's why you have these competing interests like George Soros and Rothschilds. But even gangsters know that they should truce with each other once in a while to preserve their own mutual self-interest.
I think it's also important for people to see like the entire mechanism. Let's pretend it's like a tank, right? And people are concerned about the treads, and then someone points out, but it's the wheel inside that turns the treads. And then someone else says it's the axle that turns that wheel, and someone else says it's the drive shaft that turns the axle, and someone else says, well, it's the motor, it's the engine that drives the drivetrain, and someone else says, but it's the fuel, and then someone else says it's the spark, and someone else says the oxygen, and it's the driver, or the orders coming from command through their radio what to do, or the number of ordinances they stacked inside that thing before they left, or if they forgot to fill up their diesel, right? Like all those things together make the thing that we're talking about. But unless you know those individual parts, how they fit together, how to remove the contradictions, you don't really understand, and therefore you can't predict. And if we as human beings can't predict something about the future, we are at a severe disadvantage according to all the other life forms on this planet that are just waiting for us to miscalculate and eat us, whether it's microbes and bacteria or, literal predators of the apex variety.
It's like we have to connect the dots to see how the different parts of the machine operate so that we see the tank. If we're only looking at the parts, we're not seeing the tank, the forest for the trees. And it's important to understand all these historical artifacts, because contextualizing your modern news stories, it's a huge area where we're open for brainwashing or mind control, because you might only see things through the context of 9/11, or only through the war on terror, or only through the invasion of these different countries, instead of looking back 100 years to see like what events precipitated the manifestation of all these different crises that are manufactured so that position people can take advantage of them.
Well, there's a whole lot more to learn. I'm pasting for Colby there.
What I was going to say real quick about that, if you're patient, is that because literally, you guys, like that's what this show is all about. I mean, I think if you come into this whole realm of learning how the world actually works, and you like, I came at it from 9/11, Tower 7, COVID was a massive awakening. Looking at it from these perspectives, yeah, you can see the corruption on the surface, but there's such a larger agenda happening. And the deeper you go, the more you realize there is to know. And that's what this show, ever since this show came out, long before I was ever a part of this show, resonated with me so much, because Rich, you and your work and learning more about the history of your work, peace revolution, everything, it's like, it goes so much deeper than I had any idea even existed. And so that's the value of this show. And so I just want to reiterate to everybody watching and listening, please, share the show with others, because this show helps people really break free from all the problems that we talk about in the show, like this show specifically, and then use Clip Genie to make clips and just get this information out there. So just shout out for that.
Who else is giving you Clip Genie type access to be able to share knowledge nuggets with your friends? Like, it's a thoughtful thing. You could tell your friend, here's a link, go fish. Here's a link with a time code, good luck. Or here's a curated link that you just made thoughtfully for them because you know how to click a couple things on the Clip Genie. gtw.clipgenie.com. It's also on the new website when it launches, but it's on the old website as well. You can get to Clip Genie a variety of ways. Also, if you have problems, questions, concerns, comments about Clip Genie, bring them up this week. Town Hall, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern. We all get together and have unidirectional conversation turns into bidirectional conversations. Questions, answers, observations, solutions, all those things come together. It's a small group of people. We're not thousands strong in those meetings, but the few people who show up, we all have a good time. We respect each other. It's a fear-free zone of mutual respect and growth. And I think it's an idea whose time has come, like many other ideas that we're going to talk about throughout this evening. I also wanted to point out, if you wanted to learn more about the Ray Epps situation, there's not a whole lot published this past week, and that which was published can clearly be viewed as like that's conservative alternative media only over on the InfoWars side. But I'm going to be using Ground News tonight for a couple of these articles so that we can break in and get some more information that we're not getting from other news reporters. And that will be the unique value that we continue to add, in addition to knowing the history and artifacts of things like this, right? It's like everybody who's interested in truth, freedom, liberty, justice should know that Soros is not someone acting alone. He is part of a syndicate, an international banking syndicate, very specifically the Rothschild International Banking Syndicate, and their goal is bigger than America or Canada or Greenland or the UK or any of the other little places on earth that we like to live, right? These people are playing with our world like it's their little toy. They tell us so in their writings. And we have to be mature enough to use our literacy to recognize what that means and to plan some countermeasures. Because if we think their plan sucks, we can't just hope that George Soros changes his mind and finds. It's not like the end of A Christmas Carol or Grinch or something like that, right? The dude set in his ways. He's doing what he's doing. He's exemplary at it. In many ways, he's kind of like the ultimate success story for some, until you know some of the other things that had to go on. The 60 Minutes context that is buried, the Rothschild context that is buried, that starts to show you the whole deep-statedness of the Democratic Party, the Clinton campaign and foundation, and all that sort of nonsense that's gone on. And the source of a lot of Trump derangement syndrome and the lawsuits that have accompanied that whole movement for the past 10 plus years. So, or 9 years at this point.
Everyone's doing some kind of self-help these days, and you can find a million self-help courses out there. Most other courses out there are hosting lectures. They're hosting videos, they're maybe even doing Q&As, and these are great starting points to encourage learning. But at Autonomy, we believe that hands-on practice is the best way to really lock in what we're learning. There's no better way to gain confidence and mastery than through action. After each lecture, we practice the concepts we've learned with other students, giving and receiving feedback in a non-judgmental environment. The result is mastery of concepts like entrepreneurship, ethical sales, and self-reliance in an environment that directly translates to the real world. Plus, you make connections with other like-minded individuals who are learning right alongside you, and you have a lifetime membership in the community. The Autonomy course with Richard Grove equips you with confidence, competence, and courage in a world filled with confusion and noise. You can learn more at getautonomy.info. We'll see you there.
What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come